What is up, guys, and welcome to this review of the newly released Nvidia Shield. And at first I want to show you the build quality of this device. So I want to say how I feel. Certain things could have been, from the physical side of course, could have been made a little bit better. So at first I'm gonna start with the display. It's a pretty decent display. It has a 5 inches diagonal, and yeah, it's pretty much a 720p display. I think it has something like a 280 dpi, so it's not quite Retina, but you don't have this device right in front of your eyes, so you don't see any pixels at all when you use it. So it's pretty much a good display. The viewing angles are pretty good on it as well. So display is pretty decent, but the only thing I have to complain about it is that the bezels could be a little bit smaller and the display could be a little bit bigger. So I don't really feel like you need these bezels at the side. Of course, they get in handy when you type something in on the virtual keyboard on the display, but I don't really think that you need it, and a bigger display would be very beneficial for a gaming device like this. So I'd say that the bezels could be smaller. Now I get to the triggers, the buttons, the sticks, and pretty much all of the buttons on the controller, and I have to say that you could compare these to an Xbox 360 controller. Even though they're a little bit bigger, I have to say that the size of it, you have to get used to it, but the horsepower in this device makes up for the size. It also has a fan at the back. I only noticed that when I got this in my mail. So this thing has a fan, but I have to say it keeps the device cool. It doesn't heat your hands or something like that. It does its job, and it does it pretty good. So it's not even that loud. Like, I'd say that it's quite silent if you have your headsets on, or I don't know, if you're listening to music while you game, you don't even hear the fan. So that's a pretty good job. And like I said earlier, you could compare this controller to an Xbox 360 controller. So right now you see it side by side. It is a little bit bulkier, it is a little bit bigger, but it's kind of okay. So from the layout of the controller, you could compare it to a PS3 controller, because the left and the right stick are at the bottom of the device. But from the size of it, it's really similar to an Xbox 360 controller. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I want to get to the other hardware, the specs of the device. It runs with the Nvidia Tegra 4 quad-core processor with 2 GB of RAM, so it's pretty much a very powerful device. Everything runs pretty much very fast and responsive. It runs through benchmarks like a king with over 20,000 score. I won't show you the score on screen because certain companies like Samsung, for example, pushed some chips to run faster on benchmarks, so I won't even bother showing you the benchmarks, but I tell you it runs through benchmarks like king. Another downside of this device is that it only has a 16 GB flash memory unit, so you kind of have to decide which games you want to download first. But if you have the time like me, and if you have a very fast internet connection like me, you can kind of just download some games like twice. So even a third time. It's not really that bad, because in the Play Store you can download, I think you can download the apps as often as you want, so it's not really big of a deal. But yeah, it could have been like 32 GB. I wouldn't have complained about that, but I think that would have made the device a little bit more expensive. I get to that in my conclusion if it's worth it, but yeah, you gotta just wait for that. Now to the parts and connectivity. This thing is pretty much just like a standard smartphone, but it hasn't got a camera. So that's pretty much everything. It has a micro USB port, and by the way, all of the ports are at the back of the device. So it has a micro USB port, a mini HDMI, unfortunately not a micro HDMI. That one is a little bit more common, and it's also used in some DSLR cameras. So that one would have been a little bit better, but I won't complain about the HDMI port at all. It has Bluetooth 3.0, so you're able to listen to music through a Bluetooth speaker, so that is pretty good as well. It has a dual band Wi-Fi chip, so the Wi-Fi connection is very good. So that's what I said earlier when I talked about the 16 GB flash unit. You can download these games like as often as you want, and it goes very fast. Like, you have one game in like 2 GB game in like 15 minutes, so that's pretty decent. Now let's get to the software side of things. It runs Android Jelly Bean 4.2.1 and it's almost stock Android, so that's a pretty good thing. The only issue I have with it that some apps just won't run in portrait mode. I actually found out like yesterday, I think, that you can have that you can turn on a setting that you can turn the device around to see it in portrait mode, but I have to say that using this device in portrait mode, it's pretty awkward. Like you see right now on screen, playing Temple Run on this device, it is possible, but it's just very difficult because the heavy device, you have to hold it in your hand the whole time, and that's what she said, by the way. You have to hold it in your hand the whole time, and playing Temple Run on it is very difficult. So you have to decide if Temple Run is a very important game to you, but for me it certainly isn't. So yeah, well, I said it's almost stock Android because there's a little difference to all of the other Android devices out there. It has access to the Nvidia Shield store, and it is accessible through the Nvidia button in the middle of the controller, so you can see Nvidia Shield optimized games and you can just download them from the Play Store. So that is pretty useful to have that in a device like this, because you want to know if the games are actually kind of optimized for the Nvidia Shield and if they even run with the buttons, so if they even support the buttons on the controller. So that is pretty good to have a store like this on the device. Now I'm gonna get to the most interesting part of this review. I'm gonna show you a few actually good games that are available through the Shield store or even in the Play Store, and yeah, I'm gonna show you the gaming performance of 4 Android games first, and later I'm gonna show you some streamed and controlled games with the Nvidia Shield from the PC. So this device can actually stream PC games onto it, and you can play these PC games on the Nvidia Shield. So you see the PC game on the screen of the Nvidia Shield, but I get to that later in this review. So the first game that I want to show you is Max Payne, and I have to say that this game runs very fluent. It runs on 60 FPS on this device. Actually, it looks like it. I don't know the actual frame number per second, but I tell you, it looks like 60 FPS on console. It's insane. This game runs so good. The resolution is actually very high as well, and the anti-aliasing is very high. I think it's something like 8 times anti-aliasing, so that is really good for a mobile game. So I'd even recommend you this game if you don't have the Nvidia Shield. Try it out with the on-screen buttons. It might not be that bad. So that was Max Payne, pretty good game. So the next game I want to show you is Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and of course the Grand Theft Auto series is one of the most known video game series in the whole world, so it's only a must that I show you this game on the Nvidia Shield. So I have to tell you that it runs unbelievably good on the Nvidia Shield, and even better than on the Xbox One, not on the Xbox that is coming this year, but I mean the Xbox that was released before the Xbox 360. It runs in a higher resolution and with more frames than on the original Xbox, so also a very high recommended game from me. The next game I want to show you is Asphalt 8, and this is just a great arcade racer with, again, stunning graphics and a really good music playlist, which makes this game worth $10 by itself, but it only costs like 80 cents when I bought it, so it's a really cheap game, but not cheap with a bad meaning. I mean it's really awesome game. For 80 cents you can't do anything wrong with spending 80 cents on this great arcade racer. It reminds me a lot of Burnout on the PSP, which I used to play back in the day, so that can only mean that it's a really great game. So Asphalt 8. The last game I want to show you is Dead Trigger, one of the most downloaded apps in the Play Store, and it's just like all of the other games in this video. It has very good looking graphics, and it's a very addictive zombie game. And I think the next game, Dead Trigger 2, is coming out in a few days when I record this video, so unfortunately I can't show you the gameplay of that game, but you can just check it out, type it into YouTube or something, Dead Trigger 2. the graphics of this game are not even comparable to all of the other Android games or even to console games today. Like, the water effects and the shadow effects are really good for a game, but on mobile that's just something completely different. So Dead Trigger or Dead Trigger 2, I'd highly recommend these games. And a little side note tip for you guys, a great way of playing games on the Shield is using emulators. You can enjoy classics such as Super Mario 64, Tony Hawk Pro Skater, or even Tekken 3. That's what you're seeing on the screen right now. So it runs very smooth, most of the games at least. The N64 emulator, it doesn't support every single N64 game, but you can play the Mario games pretty much. So I'd highly recommend you getting some emulators for the Nvidia Shield, but of course you have to get the ROMs legally, so I don't tell you that you should go on and download these games illegally, so yeah. And by the way, I just want to comment on this gameplay right now. To my defense, I had to, hold the controller or the Nvidia Shield in front of the camera, so it's pretty difficult to play Tekken on, through the camera screen or all of the other games, so that's why I was a little bit bad. The gameplay was a little bit bad, so I have to apologize for that. But that's just how it is if you play in front of the camera. Now let's get to the most innovative feature of this device, the ability to stream games from your PC to your Shield and play them everywhere in your house. You have to be, of course, connected to the same Wi-Fi network as the computer, but right now on screen you're seeing Skyrim gameplay. And like you already know, the game on Xbox, it runs with 30 frames, so it's really pretty similar experience to the Xbox 360 version of the game, so pretty much used to everything. And the screen has a high enough resolution so that you can see every little text on the screen. Of course, sometimes it's pretty hard to read because the game's designed for a pretty big monitor, but most of the time it's very playable and very good experience. I have to say that this feature is still in the beta phase, so there's still some new features that will be available in the future. I've heard that they're working on a 60 FPS 720p stream, so you can play your games in 60 FPS on your Shield, so that would make the whole device even better. So you saw pretty much everything there is to see with the Nvidia Shield, and I'm gonna sum this review up with a little summary of the whole video. So I have to say that it's a great device with a lot of processor and graphics power. The build quality is certainly great. The device could only be a little bit lighter, so it's pretty much a little bit too heavy, but you can get used to it. It's not that bad. Another thing I have to say is that you can't really surf the web on this device. Of course you can, but it's very awkward doing that in a 16:9 aspect ratio in landscape mode, so I don't know, they could maybe do something with that, maybe some software tweaks so it's not that uncomfortable to surf the web on the 60:9 display. Another concern that a lot of people have with the Shield is its price point. $300 for a handheld device is very expensive, and you also have to take in consideration that the streaming feature is still in beta phase and requires very expensive equipment from Nvidia. So that makes the Shield very unattractive for many people. So I would recommend you to buy the Nvidia Shield if you like to play some games from the Play Store and could not deal with the awkward touchscreen controls on smartphones, or especially if you already have a GeForce GTX graphics card which is capable of streaming your PC games to the Nvidia Shield. So in that case, I would highly recommend you to get the Nvidia Shield, because the feature of, playing your games everywhere in your house, it's a pretty cool thing. And if you've got any questions about the device, be sure to hit me up on Twitter. I'll try to help you as good as I can. My Twitter ID is @flatglitchgo, so be sure to follow me, hit me up on Twitter if you've got any questions. So that is it, I'm out.